o'clock, and I'd like to call the meeting of Monday, August 1st, 2022 Assembly meeting to order, if I could. And with that, would the clerk please call the roll?
Chelsea.
Here.
Thomas.
Excused.
Jeff.
Here.
Mark.
Excused.
Bob.
Here.
David.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Okay, we have 4 assembly members in the chamber, and we have 1 on Zoom call and 2 others excused. And with that, we would have the voluntary pledge of allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 1 set of minutes on the agenda, the July 18th, 2022 Assembly meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So move. Second.
Okay, it's been approved by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Kensinger to approve those. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, they've been approved. Next item, amendments and approval of the meeting agenda. Are there any amendments to today's meeting agenda? Member Tremblay?
Thank you. I'd like to add an item, discussion item. It'll be, I guess, letter A. The topic would just be assembly meeting August 15th, attendance.
Debbie, did you pick that up?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Are any other changes that folks want to make to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So move.
Second.
Okay, it's been approved, moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye. All right, we'll move on. Moving on, we have no public hearing today. We have no bid awards. We'll move on to person to be heard related to the agenda. Clerk, is there anybody on the line that would like to talk to items related to the agenda?
There's no one on the line.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the audience that would like to talk to it? Mr. Murgis would like to go ahead and to the podium and state your name. And you have 5 minutes, and I would ask the clerk to keep time, please.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is John Murgis. I am representing myself and my business, Petersburg Marine. And I'm here just to speak on the priority ranking of the community projects. And presently, number 2 on the list is Scow Bay Haul Out and Wash Down. And that's for $7.2 million. And then number 6 is Papke's Landing improvements, dock and so forth. And it's $6.4 million, very close to the Scow Bay one. My suggestion is to consider swapping the positions for those to do so that Papke's is number 2 and Scow Bay is number 6. And to expand a little bit, I think you need to be more realistic about obtaining grant funds. It's difficult for granting agencies to give out money for project purposes that are already well served by private enterprise. For instance, the Scow Bay project includes 22 approximately new dry land stalls for vessels. Private businesses already have 12 stalls on the turnaround pad, and an almost adjacent business has an additional 38 stalls, all with utilities. All are operating at less than 50% of occupancy. There are many other requirements granting agencies have that do not well fit the Scow Bay project, but would fit very well the Papke's Landing project, particularly community support. The conceptual Scow Bay project did pass a ballot measure 5 years ago, but times have changed. I question if it would pass a ballot in its present form. Petersburg is the most underserved community in Southeast for conventional boat ramps. The proposed Scow Bay ramp, designed only for hydraulic trailers, would do nothing to alleviate the ramp shortage. I think you would be surprised at how quickly you would obtain grant funds for PAPKs, but timing is of the essence. Funding opportunities are short-lived. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Murgis. Any questions from assembly members? Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience? Chris, would like to talk, speak? Come forward, please. For those listening in, Chris Cotta has a presentation.
So this is Chris Cotta, Public Works Director.
Excuse me, point of order, Mr. Mayor, Chris, are you talking as a privately on your own behalf or on?
I'm planning to
behalf of
speak
Public
on
Works.
behalf of my departments.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so Chris Cotta, Public Works Director, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Public Works Departments and particularly the motor pool department. And this is in regards to new business item ordinance 2022-11, which would increase purchasing authorization limits for the department heads and the borough manager. As everybody knows, purchasing power has decreased over the years, and I came to work for the department in 2008, and it was 4 years prior to that the last time spending limits were increased. So it's been 18 years that we've been under the current limits. So during that time, I think things have probably easily doubled in cost. And we end up with a lot of situations in motor pool in particular where those limits just cost us extra work and efficiency and even result in more lengthy procurement times for vehicles. An example of an everyday thing and how this impacts us is fuel purchases. In the past, that $5,000 limit was fine for buying fuel. We typically buy 12 to 1,500 gallons at a time. Lately, those invoices are $7,500. Well, that's something that we could sign off on before. Now we have to send it down to the manager and get his approval. And it's really just a routine everyday thing. It's not we haven't changed anything we're doing. It's just things cost more now. And so adjusting these limits it's really not an increase so much as a catching up to what purchasing power used to be back when these limits were put in place in 2004. Another area this would help us out a lot is in purchasing some of the lower dollar vehicles that we buy, especially light duty vehicles, trucks and SUVs. We've been dealing with incredibly long lead times for a lot of those units. And our current procurement process is really geared around buying new and buying on government contracts. Unfortunately, that type of buying takes forever these days. Maybe that will change one of these days, but right now we've got rigs wearing out and we don't have a very quick way to replace those things. I've got a couple of trucks, the harbor department flatbed and plow truck is an example. The building maintenance truck is another example. Those trucks are at the very end of their service lives. And I have not been able to source new vehicles for those. Those would fall within this, $30,000 to $75,000 bracket. So if the manager's purchasing authority is increased, we could potentially either find a new unit or find a good used one, 1 or 2 years old, and fill that gap in our lineup. Whereas if we go the traditional route, it's going to take a lot longer, and we might end up with a situation where a vehicle has to be retired before we have a replacement for it. In fact, that's happened in the police department already, we're still playing catch up with that. So there's some definite benefits to motor pool operations in particular if these spending limits are increased. And so I would encourage the assembly to support this, or at least if not, if it doesn't pass, at least think about ways we could maybe solve some of these other problems that we're having. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cotta? Dave?
Maybe
Simply?
for the manager. And I can ask these questions later on when we talk about that. I'll defer to that.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience to talk about items related to today's agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on there to persons to be heard unrelated to the agenda. Is there anybody on the in the queue, clerk?
There is not.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the audience on items unrelated to the agenda? Seeing.
Hello,
Gloria-
my name is Glorianne Wallen, and I'm here as a citizen just to put a shout out to Parks and Rec Department this month. We had a last weekend, or not this past weekend, but the weekend before, Stephanie and Julie organized a children's swimming evaluation, and it was really wonderful that there were a bunch of kids up there. Julie took time to evaluate the swimming abilities of both my children. One is 2 and one is 5. And Stephanie was there with my cell phone capturing it all. So I really appreciate that, the work they do for all our citizens. And then also shout out to Colin and Joe for the beautiful job they're doing this year with the flowers. When Jesse left, we thought he was one of those irreplaceable people, and we miss Jesse, but Colin and Joe have just done a phenomenal job, and we really appreciate the work they especially do around the harbor. So I had 3 people in one day come in last week and say, hey, you guys, whoever's doing your flowers around town, please let them know that we, as visitors, we really appreciate it. So I wanted to extend that on to you, that those guys are doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. And I think we all agree on that. They're very pretty this summer. With that, anybody else on items unrelated to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on. Today, there are no board, commission, committee reports. There is one item on the consent agenda, and that's Petrol 49 Tidelands lease renewal. Petrol 49's Tideland lease with the borough is up for a 5-year renewal as of June 1st, 2022. As stipulated in the lease agreement, an appraisal of the leased land was performed by Ramsey Appraisal Resource. The appraised value of the lease is $966,275, an increase of $27,000 from the 2017 appraisal, bringing the annual rental rate to $72,617.82, an increase of $420 annually. Do I have a motion to approve this lease?
So
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this lease. Are there any questions or comments by assembly members? Okay, seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
David,
yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, and the Tidelands lease renewal has been approved unanimously. Moving on, report of other officers. First off is the Petersburg Medical Center report. The Petersburg Medical Center CEO, Mr. Hofstetter, will update the assembly on current events at the medical center. Phil, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Phil Hofstetter, Petersburg Medical Center CEO. First item is this weekend, August 6th at 10 a.m. at Skull Bay is the paddle battle. It's our annual PMC Foundation fundraiser. Really want to encourage participation and registration. We have, for those registering for the event or donating to this cause, which is the scholarship program in the community for the foundation. We have some prizes, the eligibility for prizes. We have a bike up for a raffle. We have Alaska Airline tickets, and we have a paddle board, and we want to make sure that we have a good showing. So this is a good cause, and this is certainly something that supports our youth, especially those that are going to college. We give out scholarships annually, and the last couple of years have been pretty challenging doing fundraisers. So we want a good, strong showing this weekend. We added the bike portion. Not everyone can go out on the water and do the paddle, so we did add the paddle, and it goes to Sandy Beach, and we'll have a picnic barbecue to follow. We signed the agreement for the environmental study a couple of weeks ago, and we're moving forward. The dig should occur up on those locations that we discussed at the work session, and that should be proceeding. So a little bit slower than I'd like, but it's summertime and it's challenging to get the heavy equipment there in the queue. So we're working on that. We recently had a LTC outbreak in July with COVID, and pleased to announce that we're recovering, and was a lot of kudos to our staff on making sure that there's everyone is safe, and surveillance testing, and just making sure they're following mitigation protocols. And I know that's something that a lot of folks are thinking has passed us by, but it's not. We're still dealing with it in the hospital, and we continually see COVID cases. So we sent out the RFP for the architect on the capital budget or capital projects for our new facility, and we are with the funding that Rakowski's appropriations had provided with us, and we're also still waiting for the final on the 604, Section 604 funding that we had through the state. So we are putting in our application in, which is due at the end of August. So that's the 20 million that's still pending. So we'll be waiting on that. In the meantime, we are getting a RFP out on the street with that HRSA funding that we received. So we can at least recoup and work towards aligning ourselves with the architect. And I think that's probably about it as far as the highlights for PMC.
Thank you. Member Councilor.
Yes, Phil, could you tell us, for anybody that's listening, what they need to do or how they sign up for the paddle battle?
Yes, we'll have all our information is on our website, pmcak.org. So everything is on there. Registration is on there. Our ability to donate is on that, is on the website. So that's the best way to access that information. All right.
Other questions, Mr. Hostetter? Seeing none. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Our next item we have on the agenda is municipal election report. Clerk Thompson will report on the upcoming October 4th, 2022 municipal election. Clerk Thompson.
Thank you. So yes, our election this year will be held Tuesday, October 4th, and from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It will be in the activity room again this year rather than the gym, so that we don't displace the school kids. Cross our fingers that all works out. We have 23 positions open for election that we're hoping to have names on the ballot this year. One is for mayor, and there are 2 assembly seats, and we have seats available on every board and commission: the school board, hospital board, planning commission, harbor board, library board, parks and recreation board, and public safety board. So if anyone has questions or is interested, you can go to the Borough website and go to the clerk's page, and there's a 2022 elections page. Information is there, or they can stop here at the finance office and get information and paperwork to run, or they can certainly call and email me as well. On the ballot, as well as a whole bunch of seats that we need to fill, we will have 3 propositions this year. All 3 will, if passed by the voters, will make small changes to the borough charter. We've discussed them, but I'll go ahead and go through them real quick. Proposition number 1 basically will change something in charter that says that we are not allowed to pick up garbage or provide like electric utility service from the road to a new property outside of a service area. So we are doing those things, but the charter says we're not really supposed to. So we'd like to make the charter match with what we're actually doing. So if Proposition 1 is passed, it will just say that we are allowed to pick up garbage outside of a service area, and we are allowed to provide utility extension as long as the customer is requesting the service and paying for it. Proposition 2 changes something that I think was just a typo maybe when we did the charter. What it deals with is someone who may have a personal financial interest in a subject before a body, a board, or a commission that they are a seated elected member of. You're supposed to declare that financial interest. And sometimes the financial interest is such that the board will say that you may still vote on the subject. And in charter, it says that no matter what board you are on, that decision lies with the assembly. And that doesn't make sense. If, for instance, you're on the hospital board and the hospital board members feel that whatever the personal financial interest is would not conflict with making a decision on this subject, that board should be able to decide that, not have to wait for the assembly to make that decision. And I really think it was just a mistake when we put the charter together. So all it would do if it's passed is it would change the word assembly to the word body, so that the body of whatever you are involved in is the decision maker as to whether you can vote. And then Proposition 3, let's see. Oh yeah, so it would, if passed, it will just allow borough employees and officials to participate in borough property sales when it's conducted by outcry auction. As written right now, the charter says that if it's by sealed bid, employees and officials may participate, but not by outcry auction. And that doesn't, we couldn't figure why that is, what advantage that, would give someone. So if passed, it will allow borough employees and officials to participate by outcry auction as well in sales. I have not yet started my search for election officials. I will do that very soon. So at an upcoming meeting, I will bring you a list for approval. Do you have any questions?
Questions? You might just, it's a very simple process to pick up the form and to have it filled out to run for one of these seats. You might just real quick go through that, what's required, if you would, Clerk, please.
Sure, absolutely. There are, to run for assembly, school board, and what's the other one? Planning Commission, thank you. You do have to gather 20 signatures of borough voters in order to be able to run. So basically it's 3 forms you would fill out for one of those positions. You would fill out a declaration of candidacy. You would fill out your petition of candidacy where you gather your signatures, and then a municipal exemption statement. The municipal exemption statement is for APOC, the Alaska Public Offices Commission. Basically, it says that you don't plan to spend more than $5,000 on your campaign. And if you do not plan to spend more than $5,000 on your campaign, you do not have to file financial disclosure paperwork to run. We opted out of that years ago, we being the borough, by vote of the people. So, anyway, those 3 forms have to be filled out. And then if you run for any of the other boards, it's only 2 forms. The declaration of candidacy and the municipal exemption statement. You don't need to gather any signatures. So it really is an easy process. And I do encourage anyone out there that is interested to give it a try and give back to the community and get your name on the ballot.
I would agree. We need lots of names on the ballot. Thank you. With that, I'll move on then to the mayor's report if we could. And there is essentially the same thing that the clerk has just talked about, is the municipal election coming up. Again, I encourage folks to put their name in for the boards, commissions, for the assembly. The deadline for it is the 23rd of August. And last is the seeking letters of interest. The borough is accepting letters of interest from citizens who wish to serve the community by filling one of the vacant seats on the following borough board commissions until the October 2022 municipal election. Planning Commission has 2 vacant seats. Parks and Rec Advisory Board has 1 vacant seat. Letters of interest should be submitted to Clerk Thompson at the Borough office located at 12 South Nordic Drive by sending to P.O. Box 329, Petersburg, AK 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And with that, we'll go to the manager's report.
Thank you, sir. The harbor continues to stay busy. We are starting to see summer visitors head south and expect good transient numbers through August. The drive down is very active. The reserve system seems to be working well for the local fleet to organize their operations around 3 to 4 day weekly tour ship schedule. A new development with the American Constellation moving the drive down during the night hours of their stop for a local contractor to pump off their gray and black wastewater and transport to the borough's wastewater site is also working well. The size of the American Constellation causes some congestion at the South Harbor south end, so that's why the night hours when we have limited traffic at that end work. Harbor staff will be attending a pre-construction meeting with the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers and the contractor on August 2nd, and we'll start planning for the upcoming dredge project slated for this winter. Molly was able to attend the Esri Global GIS Conference virtually. Esri is upgrading its software program. This is our mapping software. So it's helpful to be able to attend workshops on the new workflows and features of the new program. Community Development installed portable hard drives on our desktop PCs in their area to back up the local data. They're also scheduling periodic backups of all the ComDev files on our server to avoid potential of another disk failure. As a reminder, we had some failures and lost quite a bit of data in Public Works and ComDev. The water staff is scheduling the replacement of an automatic transfer switch for a standby generator at the water storage tank. All the parts have been received and working on connecting with Matting Electric for the installation. Some parts have arrived for the storage tank piping project, in which the department must add a second means of separation for the water going into the storage tank and coming out of the tank to meet concerns of cross connection from ADEC. Alan Murph is putting the final touches on the plans for this work, and we will forward it to ADC for their approval before we launch the project. Wastewater is restarting the project to replace the forced main from Pump Station 4. Forced main will be rerouted to undeveloped right-of-ways to reduce traffic disruption and the higher costs of asphalt disturbance of North Nordic Drive and Sandy Beach Road. A request for proposals for the next phase of the design has been issued to P&D, and a meeting to fine-tune the scope of their work will take place soon. Thanks to Wastewater and Public Works for working on a residential wastewater service that was not draining correctly in the Hungerford Hill neighborhood. The small project turned into a very long day, but the crews were able to correct the line that had settled. It was no longer providing adequate service. Very good job. Wastewater staff has begun the search for a used tub grinder in support of chipping wood for the composting operation. As you heard Public Works Director Chris Cotta talk about, this is one of those type of pieces of equipment we're looking for used, and it'll be helpful if we can move a little quicker. Finding a good one of these at a cheap price or reasonable price is going to be tough. They sell new for $250,000, and we budgeted $80,000. So that shows you some what we're trying to is find ways to work on stuff a little faster. Admin staff continues to work on the Freedom of Information requests that we have received. Much of Debbie's time has been taken up on this. We've got 4 requests currently in the hopper. If I had to guess, we're probably looking at anywhere from 4 to 6 months worth of work before we can finish it up. And we'll keep the assembly updated on how that work goes. Carl is working on a plan to phase the Scow Bay generation project. The load projection study was received from the consultant, and the rough order of magnitude costs to add 3.5 megawatts of diesel generation are quite a bit higher than our initial estimates. Once a workable plan is developed, there'll be a presentation to the assembly to discuss the path forward. Power and Light responded to the scene of a blown cutout at Lyons Road, where a roofing contractor had contacted the primary conductor with a piece of flashing. The contractor's employee sustained burns in his arm and was sent to Seattle for treatment and monitoring. Power and Light is happy to report the person was soon discharged and was able to return home to his home in Juneau. The request of the contractor, Power and Light staff took part in a safety meeting after the accident and prior to any further work on the roof. If any contractor is going to be working near power lines, please call Power and Light first to discuss the scope of the project and receive information on the hazards at their location. Power and Light flew to Crystal Lake on Wednesday, July 27th to perform some maintenance on the pump back system, breach alarm, and face of the dam. This was Bob Semke's last trip to the dam as a Power and Light employee, which leads into, we did have a retirement party for Bob on July 28th. Just thanks to everyone that came by to wish him well. Power and Light is de-energized the Main Street substation transformer on July 28th. This is a periodic operation to gauge the condition of the transformer as it ages. The report will be shared with me once the testing has been completed. Reed Brothers has completed the culvert installation project ahead of schedule and is currently working on the project closeout. And our landslide cleanup continues. We're still hauling mud and clay out of the Hammer Slough Creek Basin, but making very good progress. We're still busier than normal at sanitation, including some large deliveries of waste coming to the baler and landfill from fish processors and local contractors. Building maintenance crew is replacing rotten siding on the museum and working to address some OSHA-related safety concerns in various departments. And we have ordered a key punch machine and core pinning equipment for the borough's door lock system. This will greatly increase our in-house capabilities to make keys and rekey locks, and will reduce our reliance on other organizations for these functions. Performing these operations in-house will save money over the long term and allow us to respond much more quickly when locks need to be rekeyed. The new equipment is being jointly funded by Mountain View Manor, Parks and Rec, and Public Works, and will be shared by the maintenance personnel for these departments. Thanks to all the families who had attended our swim lesson assessment. This was very helpful to assist getting kiddos into the correct lesson groups. Swim lessons will begin on August 1st, and please contact Parks and Rec to make sure your family is signed up. And please plan to join the Parks and Rec youth basketball season. Registration will open on August 22nd. Keep an eye and ear out for more information on our Facebook page and KFSK for more details.
Any questions for the manager? Member Mucci?
Thank you. I guess a question for Steve. You mentioned the 4 pending requests under the Freedom of Information Act. Are they generating a lot of papers, or how does that all work?
Yeah, we have a request from Mr. Don Koenigs, from John Otness, and 2 from Amber Burrell. Amber's request includes, well, I mean, just as an example, every email either sent or received by Chief Kerr for starting November 1st of 21 through end of July. So my quick sort of my emails produced at about 16 reams of paper. So Jim's will be more than that. And we're just 2 of many people named in the request. So we're trying to work out a way that we don't have to print stuff, but still is going to involve having to go through that many documents. But for the moment, we're hoping we don't have to print another, 50,000 pages, give or take. But we're trying to figure out if we can do it electronically, and we don't have an answer quite yet.
Follow-up question?
Yeah,
Member
well,
Mucci?
yeah, just a different question regarding the key punch system. So are we continuing with keys, or are we moving to a different system?
Same system we have now. We use a key system. For example, I have a master key, and several other people do, that will open any borough lock. And then there's specific keys that will only open a specific door. And so it's a very fancy key lock system. And right now the school was the one who had it. So we were kind of relying on the school to cut our keys for us, and they're busy all the time. So this was a way for us to kind of continue using the same system we have now, but make our own keys.
Any other questions by assembly members? Member Tremblay?
Thank you. I was wondering if there was a timeline for an update, since Phil's here as well, with the conversation about the manor. I know we're still mid-hiring the director, so are we waiting for dust to settle on that for an update to the assembly, or how's, yeah.
Sure. Kind of a lot of summer vacations got in the way. Phil had asked for, a kind of a get together and walkthrough of the Manor facility, and we have not been able to provide that, to be honest with you. I wanted as many of the folks that are in the leadership roles up there to be present. I'm not sure I'm going to have that, but we are planning on meeting tomorrow up there, and we'll do our best job we can answering questions and kind of start moving further faster.
I understand the summer slowdown, so thanks. Yeah.
Other questions by assembly members? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to the new business on the agenda. We have, I think there's 6 or 7 items on new business, and I'll start with the first item on it is ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance amending chapter 4.04 entitled Purchasing of the Petersburg Municipal Code to increasing purchasing authorization limits for administrative officers of the borough and the borough manager, and to amend exceptions to bidding, first reading. And if this is approved in 3 readings, ordinance 2022-11 will increase purchasing authorization limits from 5,000 to 10,000 for administrative officers of the borough, and from 30,000 to 75,000 for the borough manager. I'd entertain a motion to change the ordinance.
So move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by a member Mucci and seconded by member Tremblay. Discussion, I'll go with member Kensinger first, please.
Yes, this is a question for the manager. Okay, my understanding is right now you have a $30,000 limit. And all the department heads are your direct employees, correct?
Yes, sir.
So wouldn't you have the authority through us to be able to authorize any of your department heads to spend up to $30,000?
Actually, no, our ordinance actually specifies was it 5,000 currently? Yeah.
Yes, we can approve 5,000 without your signature.
Right.
With your signature can be
30,000.
approved more.
So could we
yes.
change the ordinance that you would set the limit to whatever department head as you would see fit? I mean, you're
Not
the
sure.
boss, right?
I'm not
And-
sure.
I mean, you're the boss, you answer to us. So if somebody gets out of line, then it's your head that we're after. And that would give you the ability, if you had a new department head that you didn't feel comfortable with them having a larger spending authority, you could set them a lower spending authority. If you had somebody like Chris or somebody that you actually, had long experience and had a need to have a higher limit, then you could set a higher limit for them.
It may be possible. I would run it by the attorney first, but we may be able to put in language such that pursuant to the borough manager's decision of spending limits of administrative officers, something like that. I can look into it.
I mean, I just didn't want to, it sounds like with Public Works and the way fuel prices are going and purchasing, that it might be more advantageous. So some departments have a higher limit versus other departments. Or if you have a brand new department head and you're not exactly for sure whether you want to give them the checkbook at all yet or not, then you might want to have a lower limit.
Yeah, we'll have to have the attorney take a look at it. I just don't know how that language works with our current code.
Thank you. Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. So if we pass this in this first reading, we could get advice, taking what we're hearing up here. We could get some advice from both staff, Steve, and the city attorney, and see if we can incorporate Member Kensinger's thoughts and have it at the next meeting, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Member Tremblay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be voting to support this. It makes sense to me to update to current prices. And I think I'm interested in further conversation, and I know we'll have it, but my first reaction is that having a consistent policy across departments seems better for general oversight and allowing slightly less reactivity possibly. So that's just my initial thoughts, but I'll be voting yes on this first reading.
Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be voting yes in the first reading today. We only got one email from a member of the public regarding this ordinance, and hopefully if anyone has any opinions on it, they either email us before the second reading or participate in the public hearing. But no, I think it's a good plan. I think it reflects more of the current times and empowers our borough manager and department heads to do their jobs efficiently. So I'll be voting yes. Thanks.
Member Kensinger, I think you had a question again.
Yes, when and how long have we had the $30,000 limit? How many years back does that go? Do you have?
2004.
2004. So, okay,
Is your mic not working?
maybe because,
There we go.
there we go, that might help.
Thank you.
I'm using it for my iPad. So just a quick follow-up. Before 2004, what was the limit? What's the history of this ordinance?
Can't remember exactly what it was for the manager. I remember for the administrative officers, it was $500. And I think for the manager, it was only a few thousand, like maybe 5,000. It was lower. Yeah, quite a bit lower.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Mucci, you.
Yeah, thank you. For clarification, so the motion covers all three A, B, and C, is that correct? A, B, and C of the ordinance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Look at the ordinance.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Let me look real quick
Okay.
here. Yes, it does. Correct.
Thank you very much.
Other questions by the assembly members? If not, I asked that to be put on the agenda, and if the assembly wanted to amend the amount, you certainly can do that. Where I came up with it, when Carl was making the presentation the last time, asking our approval to spend $63,000 for switchgear, I was thinking that was a project we'd already approved. We went through in detail on that, but yet it had to come back to us for that approval. That's what kind of spurred my idea on. That's where I came to the 70. I just picked 75, but if anybody wanted to make other changes, it certainly can do that.
If I may, just to kind of clarify
Manager,
something that's
go ahead.
important. Thank you, sir. No matter what happens here, I still don't have the authority, which is the right thing, to approve expenses that aren't budgeted. So if a department head comes to me and says, I've got this $30,000 expense and I can move some things around in my budget to make it work, then I can sign off on that. If they say, I need $30,000 more for my budget for this, that still has to come to the assembly. Unbudgeted items are still, from that perspective. So if it's going to make the budget go the wrong direction, we're going to bring those back to the assembly.
Thank you. And that adds one other thing is that, all the years we've gone through this and have approvals, I don't think the manager in any way has ever had any kind of abuse or anything of this. I'm very supportive of what he's done. And sometimes he brings it back even within his authority. I've seen him do that. Thank you. Member Kensinger?
So just to bring up Mr. Cotta's example of motor pool vehicles, that's a good example of, because every year we approve the motor pool budget, so that's a budgeted amount. So if he needs to replace something for $75,000 and it's already in the budget, then you would not have to come forward to us.
Correct. So for example, we'll use the tub grinder. If we've budgeted 80,000 and he finds one for 65, we can move forward without bringing them back to the assembly. If we're budgeted for 80 and he finds one for 250,000, we have to come back to the assembly.
Okay, thank you.
On ordinance 2022-11, would the clerk please call the roll?
Chelsea,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2022-11 passes unanimously. And with Member Kensinger asking to take a look at changing it to allow the manager authority to change the limits for the staff.
Yes, I will. I will have something back to you on the next agenda, wording if you want to make changes or a reason that we cannot make changes.
Thank you. Resolution 2022-11, resolution approving the expenditures of $110,000 from the American Rescue Plan Special Revenue Fund 287 for paid time off, that's PTO, for full and part-time borough employees in response to continuing COVID-19 pandemic. If approved, Resolution 2022-11 will provide 1 work week of PTO to full and part-time borough employees to help replace past and future use of their earned PTO related to COVID-19 mitigation measures for our community due to borough business, school, and childcare closures, borough business, school, and childcare COVID-19 policies, and to care for themselves or ill family members. Do I have a motion to consider this?
So move.
Second.
Okay, and moved by member Tremblay, seconded by member Mucci. Discussion. Member Tremblay.
Thank you. I'll be voting to support this. People are still getting sick and having to deal with the situation. And that's ARPA money is supposed to be for helping us through this current moment in time. We did have 1 letter sent to the assembly in opposition to this idea. And one reason that that member of the public used in rationale was that other people in the community also worked hard and are working hard and deserve this time off, to which I say I fully agree with that premise, but we are not able to provide paid time off for every member of the community. If I would, I could. So if people want to take that energy and send it to other employers in town that they should support their employees, then I encourage them to do that. But I think taking care of the people that work hard for the borough is the least that we can do. So I do have a question about how much money would be left in the current ARPA fund after this expense. I'm losing track and my note taking is not what it used to be, not always should be.
So there's 2 different ARPA funds. This would be the 1.5 million, which we have designated approximately $800,000 to the hospital, which we haven't given to them yet. We're gonna have to make an agreement for that. Allocated some money to the enterprise funds. We did allocate during budgeting process some money for grant writer, a fire department, cardiac monitor, the cemetery burial walkway. Remaining, and we did, of course, budget for this, but I didn't spell it out in there what it was going to be for. It just said borough employees. And so since that was very, not a little broad, that we decided to bring it to the assembly. So there'll be about $285,000 left in that fund.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Member Stanton Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, I'll definitely be voting yes. As a self-employed person and parent of 2 children, I can empathize with those borough employees who have had to take time off to care for either themselves or their children. I think this is a very good use of these funds, so I'll definitely be voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from assembly members? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. So when the pandemic was going on in town, there were lots of emails going around from employees trying to, if they'd used up all their PTO to, I don't know, become members of a leave bank or whatever, but can you walk us through how that all worked? And this just goes into their account so that they can use it. Is it just strictly for COVID related issues or is it just PTO in general? Thank you.
I'll jump in and group, please correct me if I say anything wrong. So PTO is allowed to be used for whatever the employee sees fit. We ask people to schedule it if necessary. During the pandemic, most of our employees had to use their PTO or go unpaid. And so employees work together to share PTO. We have a policy, we allow that. So I can give PTO to someone. And in fact, I think pretty much all of us did at one point or another. This would go just into their bank. You have a certain balance and we just add that to the balance and they could use it as they see fit in coordination with whoever their supervisor is, making sure that it works with current schedules.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions by assembly members? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Chelsea,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Thank you.
The resolution on 2022-11 passes unanimously. With that, I'll move on to telehandler purchase for the Harbor Department. In the approved fiscal year 2023 budget, the Harbor Department budgeted $96,000 to purchase a telehandler, perform the functions of forklift, ground maintenance, vehicle, and snow removal. The telehandler will be added to the motor pool replacement schedule for an expected service life of 20 years. Public Works Director Cotta recommends purchase of the telehandler from Bobcat Juneau at a cost of $94,511.98. Do I have a motion to consider this?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Moved by member Mucci, seconded by member Tremblay. Questions and comments by assembly members? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you very much. So this has been budgeted in the Harbor Department budget for this year. Maybe just a brief explanation other than what it says here for the members of folks. So what this machinery does for the Harbor Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's a piece of equipment that it's needed in the Harbor Department for all of the stuff that we do to maintenance the harbor. We have quite a large facility, and we've been borrowing from other departments use. We currently co-share a forklift that we have to get from Public Works to bring down and lift things on top of our AML vans that we have stashed all over creation, just so that things don't get taken. We need it for snow removal. We need it for filling everything from potholes to moving brush to all the things that it takes to maintenance a facility as large as ours. So between that and our flatbed that we're desperately trying to find, a replacement flatbed, it's an essential piece of equipment for maintenance.
Other questions by assembly members? If not, I have a quick one for Glo. Is that for use by borough employees, but not to be rented out or to be given out?
Yeah, right. Just borough employees will use it.
Thank you. Okay. If no, I don't see any other questions. Would the clerk please call the roll on the purchase of a telehandler for the Harbor Department?
Jeff,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes. Next item on the agenda is compact backhoe loader purchase for Parks and Rec Department. In the fiscal year 2023 approved budget, the Parks and Rec Department budgeted $80,000 for their motor pool funds to replace their aging compact backhoe loader. Public Works Director Cotta recommends purchase of a CT 5550 compact tractor with front end loader and backhoe attachment from the Bobcat of Juneau for an amount not to exceed $51,388.72. Do I have a motion to consider this?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by member Mucci, seconded by member Kensinger to look at this, to purchase this equipment. Questions from assembly members? Member Mucci.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So this has been budgeted in the 2023 budget. What will this piece of machinery do other than replace them? But what does it actually do on a day-to-day basis on the Parks and Recreation Department? If anybody can tell me.
So essentially, it's a multi-purpose unit for them. They use it a lot as a forklift. They also do a lot of grounds work, so they'll use the bucket for moving grounds materials, backhoe functions used for digging. There's obviously a lot of digging and moving materials that happen as part of the landscaping part of what Parks and Rec does. So yeah, basically it's a multi-function machine and performs several roles for them. And their current unit is out of service at this time. So something they definitely need.
Thank you.
Member Kensinger.
Is this also used up at the cemetery?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's one of the areas that they'll get a lot of use out of it is up there, a lot of grounds work up there.
Other questions by assembly members? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll on the purchase of the backhoe loader for Parks and Rec Department.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that purchase is passed unanimously. Moving on, Public Works Culvert Project Change Order Number 1. Public Works Director Cotter requests approval of the culvert project change order number 1, increasing the project cost from $342,228.53 for a new contract amount of $910,833.53. This change in new contract amount is within budget of the $970,425 allocated by FEMA for this project and will be paid for with FEMA funds. Do I have a motion to consider the purchase?
So moved. Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Kensinger. Questions by Assembly members? Member Kensinger?
Chris, since this is a rather substantial increase in the cost, could you just explain to everybody?
Sure thing. So essentially, the extra cost here is related to us having to dispose of more of the excavated material than we were originally planning to take out and replace it with shot rock and other materials. The FEMA budget for this work was $970,000 some dollars, and that was a reflection on the fact that there was an unknown amount of material in the ground. We didn't know for sure how much we were going to have to replace when we dug out this gigantic hole back there. It became apparent a few days after Reed Brothers started excavation that a lot of the material wasn't going to stack or compact, for purposes of putting it back in the hole. And so instead of reusing that material, we brought in shot rock to replace it. We also, on either end of the project on this, 210-foot culvert, we put extra shot rock to basically form a wall or a barrier, if you will, on either end of the project so that we could reuse as much material as possible without any chance of it, subsiding or failing later. So essentially we contained as much as we could within the finished project. And then we hauled out, what we had to for disposal. And so those numbers, the extra disposal is a fairly large portion of that number. And also the additional rock that we had to bring in is a pretty good size number. But overall, we came in under budget and, because we were not changing the scope of the project, we were just really changing project quantities for disposal and for different rock materials. FEMA doesn't view that as a major change to the project. And so it doesn't require any special process with them because it comes in under their project budget. And it's really just an extension of existing quantities under the contract. So does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Other questions by Assembly members? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you very much. I had an opportunity to go up and look at the impressive amount of work that's been done up there, and it's unbelievable what's gone in there and the amount of work that still continues on the uphill side of that thing as well. It's just unbelievable how much is in there. Does this FEMA money cover that work as well that's going on up there right now? Is that all part of the FEMA money?
If you're talking about the landslide recovery that we're still working on, no, the FEMA is not going to cover that under this current project. Now, we might be able to apply for some more funding through FEMA or through another agency, which I'm looking into that potential right now. But it will not, none of that work will be covered under the culvert replacement project.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll on change order number 1 on the culvert project?
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and that passes unanimously. Moving on, a prioritization of the fiscal year 2024 capital projects list. Manager Giesbrick requests the assembly to prioritize the top 15 capital projects for fiscal year 2024. He has selected his best guess of the top 15 projects to get the conversation started and asked the assembly to amend and/or approve this list. With that, do I have a motion to consider the prioritization?
So move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Tremblay, to consider the prioritization. And with that, I'll open it for discussion or changes. Member Tremblay?
I guess I just wanted to confirm with the manager that the numbers ranking does affect which ones are more likely to get money, or is this a whatever's available that applies to the project is more likely to get the funding, or do you know?
You're the mayor or acting mayor. It's kind of a little both, actually. Generally, priority means something to elected officials who look at this. In other words, what's most important to the community, but it has to fit within the kind of projects that they're interested in funding. So, you know, as an example, we got funding this year on a project that wasn't even a priority list, which is some lighting for the baseball fields and the skating rink, not even on the priority list. So it's, you know, the priority becomes important if, you know, they're looking at a project and they're going, well, okay, wow, the local community thinks this is really important and it fits what we're spending money on. Carl may get, you know, 1.6 million on the Clearwell, and it was on this list now, but last year was not a priority item, but yet Senator Murkowski saw it and said, oh, we've got water funding for projects. So it's kind of hit and miss. We've always had a priority list so that we could speak to that issue, but I'm not sure it always matters on what gets funded.
Thank you.
Member Cancino?
Just a question or clarification on the Blind Slough Hydro rehabilitation. I am aware that we've already bonded for that project. Is this trying to obtain funds so that we could pay back that bonding or what?
This was on through the mayor. This was actually on by the assembly last year, so I did not feel comfortable removing it. It's a funded project at this point.
So is it safe to assume that we can remove that, or what's the purpose of it being on the list?
Yeah, I would say it could be removed, but the assembly has to make that decision.
Okay.
That one and the South Harbor maintenance dredge are both fully funded at this point. So if the assembly
Eugene?
wanted to remove those and add something else, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Well, does the assembly want to remove items 4 and 8? Is that what it is?
I'd second that motion.
Okay.
there's a motion on the table to remove items 4 and 8.
Question before we vote on that, are there any of these other projects that are substantially funded at this time that do not need to be on this list?
No, I think everything
Okay.
else should stay. If the assembly wants it that way.
Member Eugene?
Yeah, thank you. I just, based on Steve's info and the additional info, I think we should take both those off there and make that list a little bit more concise and more accurate and give Steve a better tool to use. So, yep, I'll be voting for the amendment. Thank you.
Member Stanton Gregor, you had a question?
I did not. I was probably just swatting a bug past my head. No questions.
Thank you. Okay, if I could, there's an amendment on the table to remove items 4 and 8 off this list. Would the clerk call the roll on the amendment?
Chelsea,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
David,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
amendment has been approved to remove items 4 and 8 off the list. Are there other changes that members would like to make? Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item, I think it was 10, on the aquatic center refurbishment, that $3 million number there, does that include all the electrical work that has been going on? Thank you.
Manager?
Through the mayor, no. It's probably way too high, the 3 million, but we don't have good estimates on what it would cost to paint, remove the old paint in the aquatic center and replace it. The electrical and the engineers that worked on this and gave us an estimate on everything else said like a year and a half ago that it'd be about 1.8 million, not including the painting. So I took a rough guess and just put 3 million there, but we don't have a solid number there.
All right, thank you.
A follow-up question to Member Mucci's. That would include then painting the ceiling and then making all the changes that you need to make to bring that up to standard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from assembly members? With that, would the clerk please call the roll on the amended
Sorry.
list? Member Tremblay, excuse me, I'll
Thank-
hold back.
Thank you. So we can have up to, is 15 a set number or it's an arbitrary? So we're not trying to fill, like we can only get 15 on the list?
Through the mayor, there's no number.
Okay.
So you can have 15, you can have 10, you could have 25
Okay,
if you
then
wanted.
I'll.
Yeah.
It's like if we can have up to follow up, if we could have up to, my rationale was if we could have up to 15, then I can put 2 more on, but if it doesn't really matter that much and if they still manage to see the full list. So, okay, I'll hold myself back and I'll be ready to vote. Thank you.
Okay, with that, would the clerk please call the roll on the amended list?
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
Jay.
Yes.
with that, the amended list is passed unanimously. And I will move on then to item G, which is Housing Task Force. Assembly Member Mucci requests approval to form a housing task force and to seek letters of interest to serve on the task force. With that, I have a motion to consider this item.
So move.
Second.
Okay. With that, Member Mucci went forward and it's been seconded by Member Kensinger. With that, Member Mucci, you have the floor.
Sure, thank you very much. We talked a little bit about this at the last meeting and talking to several people, several city staff, and, I think it's important that we, at least at the assembly level, have a group that can work with the assembly's backing to look at housing in Petersburg and figure out what the needs are in Petersburg. I know we need more entry-level housing and just we need more of a lot of things in the housing market here in Petersburg. And when we were talking about the early childhood education problems we were having over last winter, we started out with a group in town, the Share Coalition, who brought forward a good list of things that might help the situation in childcare. And I noticed that there's another group similar to that meeting in the first part of August, I think the 12th of August, to kind of a citizens group talking about housing and what needs to get done. And a task force like this would take a while to come together. It would take probably, I imagine we wouldn't seat anybody on there until probably September, October. And so this would give us an opportunity to talk with builders, developers, send a note to PEDC as well as the Chamber of Commerce, reach out to PIA, Planning and Zoning, and get some input from staff to get like a 12 to 15 member group that is focused similar to what the Early Childhood Education Task Force is doing to address some of the concerns. And if it could be folded in with this citizen group that is out there working on different parts of housing issues, similar to what we're talking about, I think it's a good thing. We could possibly fold that community group in with with the task force. So I think like childcare, I think this is one of the most important issues facing Petersburg. Every person that we've hired within the borough over the last several months, police officers, up at the fire department, Mountain View Manor, they were all looking for houses, and without a place to stay, it's impossible for somebody to work here. Somebody even went as far as looking at taking a boat for a test drive, trying to figure out if their wife could live on a boat while they were trying to find housing. So, this is a crisis situation in Petersburg, and I think that for me, the task force just focuses the assembly and the boroughs focus on housing. I'm not taking away from anything that a community group is doing, but I think anything we can do, the more we do, the better it is, and hopefully we'll come up with some kind of solution. So that's kind of my thought process in asking for the task force. So thank you.
Other questions from assembly members? Member Gensinger.
Yeah, I got a couple comments. Unlike childcare, housing is something that the borough can have an impact on because the borough has the largest reservoir of unoccupied land in the area. And then also through planning and zoning. Simple changes that a lot of communities around the country are making now in their planning and zoning codes. And also changes that were originally proposed under the original changes to the zoning code could dramatically increase the availability of housing in the community. So I see the assembly starting a task force is necessary. And I think it's important that we work with this task force closely with planning and zoning so that we can figure out what we can do to alleviate this problem. And this problem has so much reach in so many other areas in the community. Basically, as Member Mucci said, we can't attract people to come to town and work if they can't find a place to live. It's a pretty simple problem. And I think a lot of the growth in our community will be constrained if we can't increase our housing supply. The other thing that I've noticed just from casually driving around town, that there's a lot of housing in the community that's not going to be here 10, 15 years from now. I mean, we saw this last winter with the collapse of numerous older trailers and some of the trailer areas here in town. So I think we have to realize that this problem is going to get worse instead of better unless we start taking action now to alleviate this problem that we're having now and will continue to have in the future.
Thank you. Member Stan Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it sounds logical. We're obviously it's a big task, and if I were to boil it down to its simplest terms, I don't see any downside to getting a task force organized. I know it's something on everybody in the community's mind. So I'll be voting yes.
Thank you. Other questions by assembly members? Member Mucci?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question, but if we pass this, do we need a date to seat this? I guess, like if we did it on the second meeting in September, or what's the best mechanical way to do this? I guess I'm asking staff.
Yeah, it would be nice if you could set a date that you'd like to make appointments, and then I can just advertise for letters of interest, and then whatever date you set, we'll bring it back before you at that meeting.
Member Tremblay?
Thank you. That seems like something that could be the next item on the agenda, not to skip ahead, is to have a work session on this topic. So maybe that could be a good time to set parameters and goals for a task force if we form it. Am I correct in that?
Other than at a work session, decisions can't really be made. But yes, you can talk about it, and then at the next meeting, give direction by taking a vote.
So flesh things out before we get to decision-making time. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to vote in support of this. This is a big all hands on deck issue for the community. On a related note, I'll be part of a meeting later this week to talk about a housing needs assessment that would hopefully be done as a part of this, because the more data we can gather on what the situation is in town, the better. So be ready to give a report along with some borough members about what that meeting comes to. So looking forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you. Member Mucci?
Yep. Do we need to amend this if we were gonna put the appointment date on September 26th?
Sure. And do we have a meet? I don't think we have a meeting September 26th.
Oh, the 19th.
I can make that the deadline and then bring it to you the first meeting in October. Okay.
Do you, if you want to make that amendment, you certainly can.
Second.
Okay, it's been amended. No, wait.
September 26th, yes?
Yeah.
Letters of
With-
inter,
with
letters of
that-
interest.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to make a comment here yet. I don't like to be the wet one on the block, but we're not enough detail here for me to go forward yet. I don't disagree with anything anybody said, but I think that there needs to be a work session just with the assembly first. And before you decide, we decide, you know, this thing is so wide open, it's the world. And we're gonna have to pull this, in my opinion, we have to pull this back to what we really want to see done. And when we sit down with a task group, whoever is on that, what do we want as outcomes, or what are we looking for? That's kind of where I'm at. So I don't think I think the idea is excellent. I just don't think it's well enough thought out yet. Is where I come from. Thank you. Member Kinsinger?
Yes, I would assume we'd have a work session and the assembly could set the goals and the objectives of the task force. And so that just leads into the next item. So I agree with you, Bob. We need to have some sort of parameters, what we're trying to achieve, and maybe a few possible recommendations on how to get there. And then that might actually interest some of the members of the community, depending upon what we come up with, if they see an area that they're interested in and want to participate in.
I think one other question for the manager is that this can turn out to be a major workload, as it depends on how it turns out, and it looks to me like you would need to allocate staff time in some different ways. How do you see this impacting your workload?
Thank you for the question. As Assemblymember Tremblay mentioned, we've got a meeting later this week with the consultant who wrote our comprehensive plan. And for the sole purpose of talking about a housing needs assessment and what that would look like and what would it cost and what would we get out of it. I'm withholding judgment till I hear that meeting. I'd like to know, what they think it would look like, how long it would take, and what the cost would, because a lot depends when you talk about housing is what you want to focus on. Is it, transitional housing? Is it, rental properties? And by the way, I think it's all of the above in Petersburg, but one of the things the housing needs assessment would do would be outline that. So you need 14% more single family houses. You need more multifamily, whatever those parameters happen to be. And based on that, the assembly has to decide how fast you want to move, how much money you want to throw at it, and that starts to determine my staff allocations. If it's the number one priority of the assembly and you're saying, we're willing to spend money, then we can add staff, reallocate staff, change how we do things. But I'm not sure I can have that conversation intelligently at this point.
Thank you. Member Tremblay?
Thank you. I'd like to speak to that topic just because as somebody managing an already existing task force, I can see the way that I have two department heads who are members of the task group, and I am definitely taking time from our clerk and deputy clerk in the administrative support side of things. So I think it would be something added to the plate, but I would say that in a way, forming a formal task force would bring in so many more members of the community to the conversation that in a way it could also take things off of the broader borough plate, just because the more minds together, from private individuals and contractors, stuff like that. In a way, it just gets it a little more efficient. You get all the brains in a room together a little bit quicker. So in a way, to me, it almost washes out, but it would be something as we're skipping to the next topic of the work session of as we form those priorities, figuring out how we would do it in a way that respected people's time and energy, keeping it productive and moving forward would definitely be a concern of mine.
Thank you. Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think the more people we have at the table, the better. I've been talking with developers, road builders. A lot of people kind of want to be involved and they have some very interesting perspective that we don't necessarily get from the borough. And I think having those folks involved in this process is going to be, it'll be interesting to see how that conversation goes because they are used to doing things under their own way of doing business and the borough is a little different. And I think by having those folks that aren't really associated with the borough, I think would be a really good exercise for us. And I think for me, it is the number one priority in Petersburg right now because I'm sure you all feel this, not maybe feel the same way, but you're all fielding phone calls from people who are looking for houses and don't feel that the assembly is doing enough. So I want to move this to the top of the heap and see what we can come up with. So, and yeah, we're talking about the work session on the 19th. I think that our work session next, and I think we can come up with some pretty good parameters on when we have that work session to let these people figure out how we're going to address some of these issues. So thank you very much.
Member Stan Gregor, I think you had a comment.
Nope, just the wind.
Thank you. With that, would the clerk call the roll on establishing a task force with the names being, if I'm correct here, Member Mucci, with the names being selected by September 26th?
Deadline for submissions of letters of interest by September 26th.
September 26th.
And then if we do that, I would bring it to you at the October 3rd meeting for appointment. Okay. David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
No.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes with four members in favor and Member Lynn voting no on it. Next item is the Assembly work session on housing. Assembly Member Mucci requests a work session be scheduled in September to discuss the housing issue in Petersburg. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll put it in the floor first. I need a motion to put it in the floor, please, to consider.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Been prioritized by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Tremblay. Okay, Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also suggest, I don't know if we need an amendment to this to have the work session on September 19th. Assembly meeting.
That is assembly meeting. 5th and 19th or excuse me, the 6th and the 19th in September.
so a work session before the meeting or after the meeting, the assembly meeting?
Somebody else has a better suggestion, but I think it's important that we have the work session before we seat the task force.
You're suggesting the date of?
September 19, which is the 6 p.m. evening assembly meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci.
Yeah, how about if we suggest September 20th for the work session? That's my motion as an amendment.
Member Kensinger.
Yeah, the only problem is Southeast Conference. I'm not for sure. I believe it. Maybe it's the week before. I got to check my dates on that. The annual meetings, I believe that week.
Member Tremblay.
Thank you. I'd actually like to suggest earlier, the week of August 29th, going into September. My rationale is that we will be seeking names, and the sooner we can make clear expectations of what the task force will be doing, the more people know whether or not they will be interested in joining the conversation. So giving people more time to get a sense of where we're looking as a body, to me, gives them a better sense of knowing their level of prospective engagement. So that week in general would be better for, I think that, but I'm open to days.
Member Kinzinger.
Yeah, I think sooner is better than that late in September. I agree with Member Tremblay, and I'll just say August 29th, a Monday.
For, Member Stan Gregor has his hand up.
Thank you, Member Lynn. Yeah, Member Tremblay, I think hit that right on the head. Earlier we get together and try to, hash out some parameters to give task force good marching orders would be better. And yeah, late August works great. And date Member Kinzinger said, was it August 29th? Sounds great. Anything late August, I'll be back in town. Works for me.
Thank you. Do we need a motion to make it the work session on the 29th?
Sure, let's go ahead and have a motion in a second and we'll
Make that motion.
amend the original.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion to have our work session on August 29th.
Second.
Been moved by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Tremblay to have a work session related to housing situation in Petersburg on August 29th.
Can we go ahead and discuss time as long as we're talking about the date?
Excellent.
Thank you. I know evening meetings are kind of a pain, but I think it's important to have it in the evening so that the people who are in the business and can attend. If we had it at noon or early in the afternoon, I don't think you'd be able to attend. But I think it's important that we get everybody that we want involved, giving them the opportunity. So I'm guessing 6 o'clock?
So you would amend your motion to
Yes, to August 29th at 6 o'clock.
Member Tremblay?
No, I second that.
Okay. Been moving to second to have a work session August 29th at 6 p.m. on housing in Petersburg. Would the clerk please call the roll on the motion, please?
On the amendment? Yes.
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. That, now, the Assembly work session now has been scheduled for August 29th at 6 p.m. Is there any other parts of this, Member Mucci, you would like to change or add?
Yeah, thank you. Nothing to change but possibly I don't know how we're going to do this, but I know several of us have been talking to different groups in town. And I think in an organized effort, we should at least, or I plan to turn my list of the people I'd like to see at this meeting to the clerk to have the folks, make sure that we have a focused group of the folks that we want at this work session, as well as members of the public. I can certainly forward the list of the folks that I would like to see invited. And I know Member Tremblay's been working with some folks as well. And I think any others that the Assembly would like to add. I think it's the more inclusive we are on this, the better conversation we'll have. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Member Tremblay, you were.
Yeah, not necessarily related to that, just that there is a community, it's a community conversation through the Share Coalition that is meeting on the Friday, August 12th. And if people would like to learn more about that meeting and possibly getting involved, I can connect you to the people organizing that. Just more people in conversation, the better. So just wanted to make sure to highlight that while we were on the topic.
Thank you. The clerk, to the clerk, do we need any other motions we're okay?
I think we can go ahead, if it's okay with you, and vote just as amended. Just vote
Can I
on the
chime in real quick,
original.
Member Lynn?
Oh,
Okay, I'm sorry, Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, no worries. Just I don't know, piece of feedback for the format, as a work session, and I would caution us not to have too big of a lineup for testimony. Obviously, I want it as much as possible, but as by definition, a work session isn't the town hall. So I want to make sure we allocate plenty of time for hopefully all 7 of us to thrash out what we're thinking, as opposed to more of the meeting Member Tremblay said, which is more of a basic community feedback session. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll on the amended motion?
Sure, and just to be clear, so that there isn't any question when we do have the work session. Yes, we can invite certain people that the assembly asks to be invited. And yes, the work session will be open to the public, but unless you are invited to the work session to speak, there will not be public speaking time during the work session. Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
And I think there also probably needs to be some time limits put on that too, at the time when we set it up.
You mean
So-
time limit for the work session
Time
itself?
limits for speakers so that you can get everybody can be heard. That has asked to be.
For speakers, so, but we wouldn't have public speakers, only the people that you're inviting, correct?
That's correct. But even for those people, if the list gets very long, then you're going to.
I would think it wouldn't be like a testimony thing. In my opinion, it's going to be, you know, your tables around and people just talking. So it wouldn't be like someone standing up to having to be timed and they're talking. There would be questions and then discussion.
Member Tremblay.
Thank you. Just, for example, if people were to give their input on the topic of housing to the assembly, an assembly meeting would be a great way for them to give us that input in advance so we could have those thoughts in mind at the work session, for example, correct?
Absolutely,
Okay.
or via email. Yes, please do send in your thoughts.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, I think we've got it now.
Okay, so one more vote as amended?
Yes,
Okay. Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
thank you.
That it passes unanimously, and I will move on. There are communications into the package and online that folks could take a look at. With that, we have assembly member discussion items, and I believe Assembly Member Tremblay has an item that she would like to discuss.
Just really quick housekeeping. I have family coming to town the third week in August, and summer is rather skeletal for assembly attendance. And so I just wanted to make sure we weren't running into quorum issues if I happen to miss it. We don't really know our schedule. It's health and weather dependent planning. And so just wanted to check in with everyone and see what their schedule was like for that week.
As
I'll
far as I
likely be
know,
flying.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll likely be flying that day, so I cannot be counted upon for a quorum that day. I may be able to make it, but I don't have my flight schedule as of this point.
Thank you. Okay, Clerk, you had a question?
I was just going to say, as far as I know, at this point, the only other assembly member that wouldn't be able to attend is Mayor Jensen.
Sounds like we're covered.
Okay, I'll be tentatively on standby.
Okay.
If anyone gets sick, tell me in advance.
All
Thank
right.
you. Okay, thank you.
Any other assembly member comments or that we have for this session? Seeing none, any recognitions by assembly members? Member Tremblay.
Just a note of gratitude. People have been really rallying around families dealing with difficult times between fundraisers or sending letters of support to people dealing with health issues. And I'm just feeling really grateful to be here. And so I just thought I'd end the meeting on that note. The community really does a lot for each other, and it's really inspiring to see.
Thank you. Member Stan Gregor.
Yeah, I kind of missed this one in assembly member comments, but it's recognitions also. Yeah, like as was said earlier, in terms of the filing period being open for public office, I highly encourage anyone who is considering public service to do so. Having an engaged community in the democratic process makes for a better democracy and a better community. File for assembly, file for planning, file like wherever you think you're a good fit. A full ballot is good for the democratic process. So I cannot strongly encourage people enough to run for something that fits their interest level. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one that this past week there was a rescue done by both the hospital folks and our own borough folks. It started at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the pickup was about 5:30. It was a pretty tough time to done. It was quite a ways out of here. I'm sorry I can't go into names, but it really shows to me the dedication of the folks both here in the borough and in the hospital of what can be done. You know, that it was quite impressive. I thank everybody for what they did. With that, if there's no other comments on there, I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Nice work. See you guys.